And we are live. My stream key changed for some reason. I don't know why. But now we are live, so cool. Very strange. Looks like I'm having some stream issues, though. Dang. What is going on? I'm not dropping frames. No, it's working. Okay, cool. Cool beans. Check resolution. 1920, 1080, which is not optimal. Okay. That's weird. Why isn't it optimal? Got 6,000 kilobits per second upstream. That's plenty of bandwidth. Oh well, I'll figure that out later. So now that we're beyond the technical difficulties and we're 5 minutes into our hour, we won't even need an hour today. We're gonna get started. So if you're watching this live, which no one is currently viewing, or if you're watching later via playback in the archives, hit me up in the comments or in the chat for just questions you have about anything we've covered so far. We've covered nouns. We've covered many aspects of the verbs in the indicative mood. We've learned a lot. We're 15 weeks in. That's a lot of time, right? That's over 3 months. So I haven't done a good job of asking, hey, do you have any questions? So I wanted to start today by just putting that out there. If you have questions, hit me up. Come to the chat, come to the comments, and ask. And I'd be more than happy to engage with you there. Answer your questions if there was anything you wanted clarification on. Today we're talking about perfect and pluperfect. That's kind of exciting. We're taking the same techniques we've been using to understand the future and the aorist, and we're tweaking it a little bit, and now we end up with the perfect. So the perfect indicative, when we're talking about the active. So this is perfect active indicative. It uses reduplication, where the beginning of the tense stem will reduplicate the first letter and then separate it with an epsilon. That's most of the time. Then it has the perfect tense stem, the tense formative kappa alpha, and then the primary active personal endings. Because this is just like in the aorist, this is just like in the future, because the tense formative has a vowel, there's no connecting vowel. Okay? So look at Leo. I destroy. You take the lambda, you duplicate it, and you separate the two lambdas with an epsilon. That's your reduplication. Okay? Then you have the tense stem. Then you have the tense formative. Then you have the endings. Lelika, lelikas, leliken, lelikamen, lelikate, lelikasin. I have destroyed. You have destroyed. He has destroyed. We have destroyed. You all have destroyed. They have destroyed. Okay? Perfect active indicative. The key is the kappa alpha. Okay? That's the key. The key to the perfect is the kappa alpha. That's going to be your most common indicator that you're dealing with the perfect. What about the middle passive? It's a little different. You still get reduplication, but now you're dealing with the perfect middle passive tense stem plus the primary middle passive personal endings. Okay? The perfect middle passive indicative has two standard components that are missing. They are not present. What are they? If you were thinking, hey, there's no connecting vowel, you would be right. In this case, there's no tense formative that contains a connecting vowel, and yet there's still no connecting vowel. Okay? The perfect middle passive does not use a connecting vowel, even though it does not have a tense formative. If you're also thinking there's no tense formative, then you're one step ahead of the curve here. You're right. There's no connecting vowel and there's no tense formative. As a result, we will see the true personal endings because there's no contracting. Okay? So look at Leo. We still have the reduplication. The lambda duplicates, separated by an epsilon. We have the stem. Then we have the true personal endings. These are the primary middle passive endings. Lelime, lelise, lelite, lelimetha, leliste, lelimte. Okay? These are middle passive. So, depending on the context, you might translate it reflexively, you might translate it passively. Okay? So, we'll translate this passively. I have been destroyed. You have been destroyed. He has been destroyed. We have been destroyed. You all have been destroyed. They have been destroyed. Okay? Now, there are different kinds of reduplication. Just be familiar with them. Be able to recognize them. The first is consonantal reduplication. This is what we see most often. If a verb begins with a single consonant, that consonant is reduplicated, and the two consonants are separated by an epsilon. Okay, we've seen it with Leo. So I kind of spelled it out for you here. You see Leo, then you got the duplication with the two lambdas. You've got the stem, you got the tense formative, you got the ending. You take the two vowels, or the two lambdas at the beginning, you separate them with an epsilon. That's your reduplication. Now, you need to be acutely aware of the square of stops because you're not going to get a double phi, a double chi, or a double theta. Okay? Instead, a phi will shorten to a p in the reduplication. Look at phanero'o. Okay? I reveal. You take the phi, you add on a p, and separate it with an epsilon. Okay? So it becomes pephaneroka. Look at the chi in charizome, I forgive. The chi will duplicate with a kappa and then separate by an epsilon. Kecharisme. Look at the theta in therapevo. You know, like therapy, I heal. The theta duplicates with the tav and then separates with an epsilon. Tetherapevme. Okay? So, consonantal reduplication, you duplicate the first consonant. The only exception is with the square of stops in these three examples, the phi, chi, and theta, they reduplicate with p, kappa, tav, respectively. Okay? So that's consonantal reduplication. Vocalic reduplication is used when a verb begins with a vowel or a diphthong. And what happens is the vowel will simply lengthen. Now, this is not the equivalent as the augment that we get in aorist and imperfect, but it appears the same. It's not the same, but it appears the same. Okay? So look at agapao. You end up with igapikamen. Okay? Where the alpha is reduplicated and made an ida. It's lengthened. Okay? Eteo becomes etika. In this case, the alpha lengthens to ida and then the iota subscripts. Okay? Etika. Now, there is an exception here, and that's with diphthongs. They don't have to reduplicate. Look at evrisco. The perfect is evrika. There's no reduplication. So then your key is the kappa alpha, tense formative. Okay? So vocalic reduplication lengthens the vowel. It lengthens the diphthong, but not all diphthongs have to reduplicate. Okay? There's another exception. Double consonants. Especially when a consonant cluster ends in a lambda or a rho. These are liquids, right? A consonant cluster may undergo vocalic and not consonant reduplication. Okay, so look at gnosko. The stem is no. Okay? So we're not going to reduplicate the gamma ni. Instead, we're going to add on an epsilon for vocalic reduplication. Egnoka. Egnoka. Now, look at compound verbs. This is important. When you have a compound verb like ekbalo, the reduplication happens after the preposition suffix or prefix. So you have ek, and then you have the beta being reduplicated and then separated by an epsilon. So your result from ekbalo becomes ekbeblika. Okay? Now with contract verbs, the ending in the stem vowel will lengthen. So look at agapao again. Iga P. Amen. Sounds like Pokemon. Iga P. The alpha changes to an E, ida, right before the kappa alpha. Okay? So you have two lengthenings in this case because the first letter happens to be a vowel, so that's going to vocalic reduplicate, ida. Then you have the alpha contract lengthening to an ida as well. Iga pikamen. Okay? So that's the contract verb. What about perfect stems ending in a stop? The perfect middle passive stems can undergo significant change when they end in a stop. This is the perfect middle passive. Okay. I'm not sure why this is. I have a feeling it's because this is where you get the true endings. And so it probably has to do with that. I'm not quite sure. I'm sure Mounce has it somewhere, but I don't need to look it up. It's fine. So just keep in mind a couple caveats. Number one, when you're dealing with the perfect stems, normal rules don't apply in the second person plural. Okay, some funky things can happen. Just be aware of it. And then the third person plural actually uses periphrastic construction, which means it's imi, to be, plus a participle form in the perfect participle. And that's how the third person plural is formed. And there's a significant amount of those in the New Testament. So let's take a look at some examples here. Grapho. So the perfect stem ends in a stop. Graph. Right? So you end up with gegramme, gegrapse, gegrapte. I'm overpronouncing here. Gegrametha, gegraphe, isi gegrameni. These are funky. Okay? However, it's nothing you need to worry about because you still see the reduplication at the beginning, right? And you still see the the primary middle passive endings. Me, se, te, metha, with the exception of phthe, right? And then you have the third person plural with the periphrastic construction. That's a dead giveaway. So this would probably be translated something like I have been written, you have been written, he has been written, or it has been written, we have been written, you all have been written, and they have been written. Something like that. Here's one for dioko. I persecute. So the dioko becomes diogme, diokse, diokte, diogmetha, diochthe, and then isi dediogmeni. So, but you still see the reduplication. So you know you're dealing with perfect. You still have the reduplication. Okay, and then you still see these are middle. Remember, middle passive. You still see the primary middle passive endings: me, se, te, metha, the, and then you have the periphrastic construction. So you can still recognize it. It's easy. The reduplication is a dead giveaway. Look at pitho, where the theta undergoes a sigma change, right? So pepisme, pepise, pepiste, pepismetha, pepisthe, and the periphrastic construction, isi pepismeni. I have been persuaded. You have been persuaded. He has been persuaded. We have been persuaded. You all have been persuaded. They have been persuaded. Okay? So just know that there are some weird things that can happen. You need to know how to work out of the square of stops. And understand that some changes can happen with the theta, the chi's, the gammas, the phi's, rather. And just something to be aware. But the key here is you're looking for reduplication, and then whenever possible, you're looking for kappa alpha for the active anyways. Okay? Now, there is a second perfect active where there can be no second perfect middle passive because there is no tense formative, right? So we're just dealing with second perfect active. And there's a few of them. You need to memorize them. They're interesting. There's a list of them at the back of Mounce. I highly recommend you pull those up, you memorize it. Turn it into a poster, put it up on your wall, put it up on a screensaver on your computer. Do something to memorize it. Have fun with it. Color code it. Make it colorful. Just do something. Have fun with it. The tense formative in the second perfect is alpha rather than kappa alpha. That's the only thing you really need to be aware of. Now, the perfect is all about past action that was completed and whose effects or results continued into the present. I have been saved. That's a past action. It's completed, and whose effects are felt in the present, okay? The pluperfect is past completed action that is entirely felt in the present, whose effects were entirely felt in the present. So instead of saying, I have been saved, you could say, I had been saved. So the nuance is that it's completed action entirely in the past, and whose effects were felt entirely in the past. Now the pluperfect, just as the name would suggest, is entirely built off of perfect. So everything you've learned about the perfect is going to apply to the pluperfect. It has reduplication. The slight nuance is it may have an augment, but it's optional. Okay, so look at the active here. It's formed by an optional augment, which I put in parentheses, then the reduplication, then the perfect active stem, then the tense formative kappa. So notice the tense formative here is kappa, not kappa alpha. If there's no augment and you see a kappa but no alpha, now you know you're dealing with pluperfect. Then it has a connecting vowel. Remember, the perfect doesn't have a connecting vowel because kappa alpha has its own vowel, right? Then you have your secondary active endings, not your primary. Okay? The second pluperfects don't use a tense formative at all. Okay? So that's how the pluperfect active is formed. Look at Leo. It could be elalikin, elalikis, elalikin, elalikimen, elalikite, elalikisan. Okay? I had been destroyed. Same as the past perfect in English. Oh, is that right? To be honest, I'm not very good at English. I personally feel like I'm better at Greek than I am at English. I was that guy in high school and college, kind of scraping by on English. Yeah. Then I decided to get this bright idea to go study Greek. I think studying Greek actually helped me with English a lot, but I am by no means an expert at English at all. So elalikimen, elalikite, elalikisan. So I had been destroyed. Oh, very cool. Well, thanks for joining. That's awesome. Any sort of insights you have like that, please share. I love seeing that kind of stuff. I'm still learning and growing all these years later. Elalikin, so Elalikis was you had been destroyed. Elalikin, notice it looks almost identical to the first person singular, right? So context would be key if that movable nu on the end is there. If it's not there, that's a dead giveaway, right? Third person singular. He had been destroyed. We had been destroyed, you all had been destroyed, and they had been destroyed. But again, that initial augment is optional. It may not be there. So the keys to understanding it is going to be you have a kappa. Yes, there's reduplication, but you have a kappa tense formative with no alpha followed by connecting vowels. Okay? So here's the second pluperfect active indicative where you've got grapho. You've got your reduplication there. But then in this case, there's just no kappa. Egegraphine, egegraphis, egegraphine, egegraphimen, egegraphite, egegraphison. So yeah, this one's pluperfect doesn't happen very often. It's just worth being aware of. That way, when you come across it, you know something a little different's going on, and you can look it up and help you work it into your translation. So let's see. What about the pluperfect middle passive indicative? You have your augment, which is optional. You have your reduplication, the perfect middle passive stem, secondary middle passive personal endings. There's no tense formative or connecting vowels that are used. The difference here between the perfect and the pluperfect is what? Aside from the possible augment, of course. If you were thinking that the perfect uses primary middle passive personal endings, whereas the pluperfect uses the secondary, then you would be right. So that's the difference. It's the ending. So look at Leo. This is the middle passive. You got elalimin, elaliso, elilito, elimetha, eliliste, elilinto. Okay? And depending on context, it could be middle, it could be passive. If it's middle, you might translate it reflexively. If it's passive, of course, it's receiving the action. So we'll translate this passively. I had been destroyed. You had been destroyed. He had been destroyed. We had been destroyed. You all had been destroyed, and they had been destroyed. Couple comments on the perfect tense. Remember, the pluperfect is mostly the same thing in aspect as the perfect tense. The only difference is that the completed action, its results, the effects, are entirely felt in the past. You can pull up Greek Grammar Beyond the Basics by Daniel B. Wallace. This is the second edition. I think they're on a third or fourth edition now. And he goes over all the different uses of the pluperfect and the perfect. And he admits there's not a lot to write about it, but the importance of these are very important. So the amount of time he spends on it is not indicative of the importance. They're very important. You have the regular use of the perfect tense. It's just completed action or event that has lasting effects in the present. The English example, Jesus has died. You have the consummative. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. The extensive. It's emphasizing the fact that the action was simply completed. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. Yeah, thanks for that feedback. I appreciate that. That's why I do it, because I feel like the conjugations are important so we can see the patterns and get the patterns to click. And then at the same time, the repetition by seeing the endings, super important. If you're 2 weeks in, are you starting with verbs? Or did you start with nouns? Depends on the preference of your professor. Just curious. And also, are you following the blue hymnal, the Mounce text? I'm curious to know what your grammar is. This is the one I taught from. This is the third edition. I learned from the second edition, which I have behind me in my bookshelf. The third edition is much bigger, wider margins, easier to take notes, and have a lot more, not footnotes, but marginal notes to supplement what's learned. So I highly recommend the third edition if you don't have that one. So I'm going to continue on here. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. Again, the action has... The action is being emphasized that it was completed. Then there's the intensive, emphasizing the resulting state of the action, translating with the present tense. So the example given is, man, your sins are forgiven you. So you don't have to translate the perfect as you have done this. You can, in some cases, translate it like a present tense. The force of the perfect comes through in how you interpret it, how you apply it, kind of a thing. When you're dealing with the middle voice, it can be, generally speaking, the action of a verb in some way affecting the subject. That's why, generally speaking, I translate it reflexively. So that's the idea, overarching, right? The middle can somehow, some way reflect back or affect the subject. So you have an indirect middle. This is the self-interest middle, where the subject does the action of the verb to the direct object, but the participation of the subject is emphasized. So Pilate took water and washed his hands. The direct object being water. The direct object being hands, right? So the subject is doing the action of the verb to the direct object, but is participating, and that's what's being emphasized, is the participation of the subject. There's also a direct middle. This is the reflexive use. So the subject does the action of the verb and also receives the action. So Judas went out and hung himself. He's both the subject, but then he's the recipient of the action as well. So these are just some nuances to the middle to be aware of as you're dealing with those. There is the redundant middle, where you can have an actual middle verb, and then you also have the presence of eavto, himself, itself, herself. You must also consider yourselves dead to sin and alive to God in Christ Jesus. So it's intensifying in this sense. It's redundant. And it's redundant to make a point. Okay? And then you have the active middle. And this is what you see with the so-called deponent. I don't use deponent language, but a verb that is middle but active in meaning. Those are the verbs that are listed in the middle in the lexicon. Okay, so they're active in meaning, but they're showing in the middle as their lexical form. So that's the uses of the middle. And that's it. Woo! We made it through. 33 minutes, not too bad. 5 minutes of troubleshooting because the stream wasn't working this morning. But we fixed it. We made it through. So hey, 1990, thanks for joining. I appreciate your comments. I hope you stick around. Hit subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you get alerts when I go live or when I put out new videos and contents. I'll get my Greek word of the day out today. We'll do another one tomorrow and every day thereafter. We're over a third of the way done. Every Saturday at 9 o'clock Pacific, 9 a.m. Pacific. That way, it gives us time to digest and practice, do the workbook. I'm teaching out of this book here, the Blue Hymnal. The link should be in the description below. I actually taught this at Fuller Seminary back in 2011. I got to teach 3 quarters there, and loved it. I loved it. But now I'm trying to make it free for everybody. So there you go. But that's the book we're working, and there's a workbook counterpart to practice it. I firmly believe we need to read the material first, then we review via lecture, then we practice. Awesome, Liberty. I've known several people who went to Liberty. That's awesome. Cool. My hope is that people are studying Greek to supplement what they're doing in college or in grad school. My hope is also that people who are not going to college or grad school get acquainted with Greek just by coming here. Because you don't need a professor to do this. You really don't. And then I'm actually going to be teaching Hebrew come January 2020. So if you want to learn Hebrew as well, I don't know if that's part of your curriculum at Liberty, but you can come here and either supplement or just learn it. We'll be doing that. So kind of a cool 2-year project. What I am doing is covering the vocabulary every day, so 1 word a day. And it's the vocabulary out of this book, okay? So you can go at your own pace if you want, but for grins and giggles, I'm supplementing by doing 1 word a day. And not only giving the definition that Mounce gives in the book, but I'm also going over the lexicon from, it's called BDAG. It's this hefty lexicon, super important. And I'm going over the glosses for each word there to supplement the vocabulary, so you can kind of get a better flavor and taste for each of the Greek words. So yeah, I'm really happy you joined. I don't get a lot of people to come. You can get access to BDAG. Your library will have it for sure. It's probably going to be in the reference side of the library. You might not be able to check it out. If you want to buy it, you can get it on Amazon. I think it's on the 3rd edition, and it's expensive. It's like $125. If you have a computer where you're using Accordance or something equivalent to that, you can get it for about the same price and have it digitally, so you can easily search it. It's super awesome. That's how I use it. I used to have the hardbound book, but in an interest of reducing my carbon footprint, I sold it. It was taking up a lot of space. Yeah, I use Accordance. I love Accordance because it's all digital. You can easily search. You can get everything you need. I have my Greek text, my Hebrew text. I have the BDAG. I even have Mounce. I have a digital copy of Mounce on my computer, so I can search that. I have Wallace. I have my Greek grammar beyond the basics Wallace. It's all there. Accordance is they've got good deals, so you can get discounts quite frequently, and their software is lightning fast. So they have it if you're on a Mac or on PC. It's awesome. I love Accordance. When I'm not doing these Greek lectures, what I'm usually doing is translating Greek and Hebrew on Saturdays at 9 a.m. So I'm taking a break from that to teach Greek and Hebrew, so there's more of a foundation for discussion. Awesome. That's great. The other thing is you can if you want, but it's not required. Always appreciate the support, but it's not required. The link is in the description below, streamlabs.com/phonophone1 if you feel like you want to donate and tip. You don't have to. I'm making this available for free. But your subscription, your follow would be appreciated, of course. That's some good support, too. We'll be back again next week. Lecture 16. We're more than halfway done, which is exciting. And the last 5 weeks, so weeks 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 20, so weeks 23 through 27 will be translating the whole of 1 John. We'll do 1 chapter a week and apply everything that we've been learning. So that'll be fun. 1 John's pretty manageable at an intro level, but it gives you enough nuances of all the different things you're working with. The nominative, accusative, dative, genitive. You're dealing with the indicatives, the subjunctives. Oh my, there's so many subjunctives in 1 John. You got your participles, your infinitives. We'll have it all. We'll even have some text critical analysis in the last week to work through a textual variant. and try and determine what was the original text. So those last 5 weeks are the highlight of all of this work. So stick around, and I look forward to working with you on that. And then, of course, as you go through the material, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. You can hit me up on the social medias. That's fine too. All the links to each of those are in the description below as well. So cool. I'm very, very glad to have met you and that you joined me today. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next week. See you later.